President Biden, as we've been saying, is set to deliver that big commencement address Sunday at Morehouse College, an HBCU in Atlanta, a famous college. And joining us now is former Secretary of Homeland Security Jeh Johnson, a graduate of Morehouse, who gave the commencement there in 2014. So you just heard the president's speech, Jay, at the African American History Museum. He could have a mixed reception at Morehouse on Sunday. They sent Steve Benjamin down from the White House to try to advance it, talk to students and faculty members who might even be protesting. A lot of concern about the Gaza war and also things that have not been delivered to the Black community.
Andrea, thanks for having me. I am a graduate of Morehouse College. I graduated 45 years ago this weekend. I gave the commencement address there 10 years ago. I've also been in situations myself where I've had to deliver a commencement address over protest, objections. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say my prediction for Sunday is that there may be some noise, there may be some objections, but overall, I think the president will receive a very respectful reception and things will be fine. A Morehouse graduation in the Black community is really special. Family all want to be there. I had 38 family members show up for mine, even though I only had 10 seats. And, you know, everyone shows up, the parents, the grandparents, the aunt from Philadelphia, the cousins from Chicago, and they all want to see their graduate walk across that stage and shake the hand of the President of the United States, and they'll be very unhappy if something disrupts that.
Why do you think the president's having a problem in support? It's clear in the polling from Black people. They help put him over the top. A critical win in the primaries, of course, was South Carolina, and Jim Clyburn. Black women, Black men, and there's just a lack of enthusiasm. Is it age? Is it Gaza? Is it not delivering on certain things for the Black community?
Andrea, I think that to address that, it's important for President Biden to talk to Black voters, not as Black voters, but as voters. Black Americans, like everyone else, are concerned about the economy. They're concerned about inflation. They're concerned about their children's future. They're concerned about health care and deserve to have the president talk to them like everyone else on these same key issues. And I think that's the essence of it. In the end, I'm sure that Black vote will come home to President Biden. But, you know, he needs to talk to Black voters as voters, in my opinion.
Well, Morehouse also, of course, is in Atlanta. It's the largest city in the swing state of Georgia. Biden flipped that, as we all know, less than 12,000 votes. Certainly Donald Trump knew exactly how many votes there were in that signature phone call. So now the war in Gaza, as I say, is also dragging down support among all young people. He hasn't gone to many campuses, and he goes to, for commencements. Right. This is the only one I think he's doing aside from military academy. So it's not traditional in a campaign year. He's faced protesters along the road. But as you point out, people are not feeling the improvement in inflation and the improvement in the economy and in jobs.
Andrea, if I could, I think that Morehouse is the perfect venue to try to talk about, given that it's the alma mater of Martin Luther King, to try to talk about the distinction between peaceful protest, peaceful, respectful protest, which is what Dr. King believed in, without spewing hate, without resentment, even civil disobedience that may violate a court order but always remain civil, versus violent demonstrations, spewing hate. I think Morehouse is the perfect venue for the president to try to thread that needle and talk about that issue. Given where we are in this moment with everything that's happening on college campuses, I'd also recommend, if I could, that President Biden talk to these young men, these graduates, about his own personal story. He's a family man, he's a father, he's a grandfather who suffered loss, who's persevered, and I think that's a compelling story for these graduates to hear.
Speaking of compelling stories, let's talk about your own experience and the importance of the HBCUs in the community. In your commencement speech, which I read, the one you delivered in 2014, you talked about coming in and not caring much about your grades. You had a 1.8, Jay, and you graduated with a 4.0. That campus and being there, and I've heard this from students at other HCBUs. I've heard it from friends of mine at Howard, which I visited often here in D.C. There is a spirit, there's faith, there's a feeling of belonging, of achieving. What was it that transformed you from that disinterested young man into a super achiever?
Well, when I got to Morehouse, I still had this fantasy that I was going to be a left fielder for the New York Mets. I therefore didn't need to study. I got to Morehouse, and I remember sitting in my dorm room, beginning of my sophomore year, and the ambition, the energy, the drive at Morehouse is really contagious. The aura of Dr. King's presence. There were members of the faculty when I was there in 1975 who had taught him, and I decided there's nothing left for me to do but study. If I want to be a lawyer, if I want to go to law school, and I was surrounded by all these other ambitious Morehouse students, and I just pulled it together, and my grades went up. I'd like to say I entered Morehouse a boy, and I left a man. And much of what I am today is due to Morehouse College. You might be able to see over my shoulder there is the President Emeritus of Morehouse College, who was Benjamin E. Mays, who was one of Dr. King's mentors and gave the eulogy at his funeral on the campus of Morehouse College in 1968.
Well, it's history. It's a lot of that, but it's also your role now as a mentor and as an example for a lot of other people in this country, a lot of other young men. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thanks,
Jay.
Andrea.